Welcome to the Soulful Circuit Podcast. I'm your host, Korin Torrence, and I am so honored to have with me today Pattie Ehsaei, the author of Never Date a Broke Dude. Pattie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
We are so excited to have you here today. You have written an amazing book that is so, I mean, you can tell that you have passion behind it.
Yep.
You have a reason behind it. And most importantly, there's a need for it right now.
Yes.
There's a lot of things shaking up the world today. And it's great that we have advocates like you right now who are in the forefront, really, preaching the importance of financial literacy, really. Right. So I just want to give you a little moment to just talk about like what your book is and why you wrote it. And then I would love to dig into like just, everything that's going on in the world today and how our audience and viewers could utilize what you have in that book today.
Yeah, thank you for that. So my book, Never Date a Broke Dude, is called The Financial Freedom Playbook. So it's not just about dating broke dudes, right? A lot of people will see it like, well, I don't worry about dating broke dudes. So I'm like, well, that's not what it's about. It's really teaching women financial independence. And the reason that I wrote it is because I took from my mom's experience what happened to her when she wasn't financially independent. So my mom was a badass in Iran when we lived in Iran.
Oh, wow.
She had a fantastic job. She had a great career. So I saw how the power dynamics were equal in the relationship with my father. But once we moved here, due to the language barrier, she couldn't find work in her respective field. So she ended up being a housewife. And I saw how the power dynamic shifted and she was in a position where she didn't have any money of her own. And because of that, she couldn't leave a difficult situation with my father. And it cost her everything, including her life.
Wow.
So I wanted to honor her and use her story as a catalyst for change so that no other woman suffers like my mom.
I love that, Pattie. That you're pulling on my heartstrings as you're talking about that, because I think we all, if we have an experience, we do know women who've been in that situation where financially they are trapped and they don't know what to do, right?
Yes.
And
Cassie, for example.
I know, everything that's happening with Cassie, there's been a lot of opinions on her situation and how that happened. But I think, there's a lot of societal norms that aren't exactly ideal for women, right? And once we actually hit a certain place in our life and the older we get, we start to realize that maybe that didn't serve me, right? And as we think of the trajectory and relationships that women go through, right? Starting out from like, okay, I'm in high school, who's going to take me to prom, right? Pick me, right? Then you go to college and you're like, pick me, let me get my MSR degree, right?
Yes.
And then you go into corporate and you're just like, wow, I have to balance this and life and maybe even a family. And how do I do that all, but still show up and still have that mentality of pick me, right? But in all these moments, if we were going to flip the script and we're going to talk about us being able to be the ones to choose or sit in a position where we attract rather than we chase, you brought up something, you have a very, very impressive TikTok page with 1 million plus followers. So I know you're doing great in that department. But, I was watching some of your content, and one of the things you talked about was the power of FU money. Can you explain to me like what that means and what you're talking about here? Because we all say FU money, but it's bigger.
Yes, it is bigger than that. So my friend, Dr. Jen Mann, she is Erica Jane's therapist. She is amazing. And I was doing my podcast with her, and she said that her great aunt Toni Mendez used to tell her that every woman should have fuck you money.
I love this.
Right?
I love it. Yes.
And she was like buried in a Chanel suit. That's what type of woman she was. And I think what's important is for us to understand that just because we are in a relationship, that doesn't mean that we have to merge everything. We are in this fairy tale land because we've been inculcated to believe that we need a man in order to be happy. We need a man in for our finances. We need a man to support us. And even the ones that work, even though we're working, we still can't shake that off. And we go into a relationship thinking we're just going to merge everything. And marriage is the biggest financial decision you will ever make in your life. It's not about love. It's about finances.
It's a contract.
And absolutely. And people don't see that. So what we need to do in marriage is to be like, you know what? We need some account, some form of money in case something happens for ourselves so that we can leave a difficult situation, whether it's abuse or we just don't want to be with you anymore. It doesn't really matter. But a lot of women...
options.
Absolutely. And money is power. And he who controls the gold makes the rules.
I love that.
And when you are not financially independent, you give the other person a lot more leeway to do and say stupid things that they normally wouldn't do and say, because they're thinking, well, where's she going to go? But when you make and control your own money, you have control over your own destiny.
Yeah.
So you put the other person on notice that you're in this relationship because you want to be, not because you have to be. And you have options and you may not choose them. And that's a very different power dynamic.
I love that. I love that. That's deep. And when you're talking about that power dynamic, one thing you talk about in your book is dating for potential, right? Or even marrying for potential.
Right.
And I think me, our friends, or people we know, we all know someone or someone who's experienced the idea of like, he is so fine. He might not have his life together. He might own like one pair of socks and be living in his mom's basement, but I can make him great, right? I can turn him into a CEO. I am a kingmaker. What do you say to women who have that mentality? What advice do you give them?
When you date for someone for potential just means that they're not doing anything now. And they likely will not be doing anything, because a person that has potential is going to show you through actions. So they may not be a millionaire now, but you see them hustling, right? You see them getting up, going to work every day, working 3 jobs. That is what potential is. And that's potential that is going to turn into something good. But you have men that are fine, that are just going to be so good to you, but broke as a joke, right? And you think that they have potential. No, they don't. If they wanted to be something different, they would be something different. So my broke man, I was out here hustling. I was working so hard, and he was in the industry, and he wasn't working at Starbucks. He wasn't doing anything. I was supporting both of us. Yeah. And it was like, oh, he has potential. No, he doesn't have potential because he's sitting on the sofa eating Cheetos all day.
Yeah.
So
what woke you up?
One day I walked in, and I had worked 10 hours that day and gone to the grocery store. I had 5 bags of groceries I was carrying into the apartment. Oh, wow. And I walk in, and I literally see him on the sofa eating Cheetos.
Wow.
And that was a wake-up call for me. I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hey, babe. I'm like, here I am hustling. Yeah.
And you're working for him. Yeah. You're taking, like, who's taking care of you?
Exactly.
Right? Who's filling your cup? Yep.
Nobody. And I was paying for everything.
Yep.
But I think that the reason that we do that is because we are so desperate to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
We are so desperate to have a warm body next to us, regardless of whether they're paying rent or not. Yeah. It doesn't matter. And I was afraid to ask him to pay for things because I was afraid that he would leave. Yeah. I so wanted him to be in my space that I'm like, well, if I ask him to contribute, he might just be like, no, I can't. He'll just go to his friend's house. I just want him here. I mean, how desperate is that?
And I think a lot of people the idea of being alone scares them.
Yes.
And as women, we're almost programmed when we're young that like, if you don't have a boyfriend, if you don't have a husband, like you're less than. But I have a lot of friends that are single and highly accomplished and some of the most amazing people I know. And they're not sitting here saying like, when can I get married? But they do think about wanting to have a family, right? And sometimes I think that's what drives a lot of people to make that maybe not thought out decision, but then it also brings in more financial challenges, right? So like for those, we saw what happened with COVID, right?
Yeah.
That forced a lot of people to be alone with people that they thought they knew, right? And then after that, they were talking about how divorce rates were through the roof.
Right.
And what do you say to women who are in that situation who realize maybe this isn't my soulmate, right? And I was just following societal norms, but now I have to start a life on my own, right?
Yes.
Independently. How would you guide them?
Well, I think first of all, we have to understand where that comes from. So that idea of we women cannot be alone, we're going to be childless cat ladies, is something that drives our behavior. And to get away from that stigma, we choose the wrong men, we ignore red flags. So we're like, yeah, I know that you're 30-something, you're still in your mother's basement playing video games all day, and I have 2 degrees.
Games?
Yeah, I have 2 degrees. I run my own company, and I have 3 investment properties. But you want to get married, and yes, I'm going to marry you because I don't want to be alone, right? My girl, what are you thinking? You have 2 degrees. He has a birth certificate.
Wake up.
Right. Those things don't match.
Yeah.
But we are so afraid of being alone that we are willing to sacrifice what is good for us just to have a warm body. And the interesting thing is that men are not viewed the same way. The guy at the bar who's 50 or 60 or even 70, right? Never been married, doesn't have kids. He's revered for being childless and single.
Yeah.
You know, they call him the OG player. He's the Mac from way back. Like, look at this dude, right? How did you get this? How did you manage not to do all this? He is revered versus women that are alone, childless cat ladies. And that's so untrue because study after study show that the happiest people on the planet are single women without children.
I saw that.
Right? And the happiest men on the planet are married men.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? That tells you that marriage is a lot better deal for them than it is for us.
Yeah.
Right? They benefit from marriage and we don't. And here we are running towards something that we don't benefit from. It doesn't even make sense.
So those are all valid points. And I think what's fascinating what you're talking about is like there's a lot of stuff on the news right now about the football player, Travis Hunter.
Yes.
I know you saw that.
Yeah.
What about those women who are accidentally having a potential come up by, the man not necessarily doing their due diligence?
Well, I think the man is just as guilty because at the end of the day, you have to have your eyes open as to the circumstances around you and what's impacting you, whether you're a man or a woman. And you have to understand that since you have a lot of money and you're a professional whatever player, there are going to be people that are going to want to be your baby's mother or to have children with you so you can support them. And I've always said the best thing that these athletes can do, honestly, is to save their sperm, put their sperm in a bank and just cut it. That is the smartest thing they can do because then they can have children in the future when they want. Right?
Yeah.
And they don't have to worry about impregnating people.
Well, I think it's fascinating because I was also looking into it too. On your TikTok, you were talking about 80% of NFL relationships end in divorce.
Within 5 years.
Wow. I did not know that stat.
5 years. Yes.
Wow.
Within 5 years. And again,
it's almost like the women aren't marrying for love.
Right. Or the women are marrying for love, but the men, because they have so many options, are not faithful.
Oh, that's true.
I always say, if I had a daughter, I would say, do not ever marry a professional athlete because a man is only as faithful as his options, as the philosopher Chris Rock says.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now it's been all over the news. We can see it forming everywhere. There's a huge shift going on right now about, money transfer, right?
Yeah.
And in your book, we're talking about a lot of money, right?
Yes.
And how to get there. There are a few power players that we see right now that, either through divorce or transfer of wealth or, other things that are happening. They're saying that in the next couple of years, trillions and trillions of dollars are going to go to women, right? Yeah. It's almost going to be an opportunity to create a matriarchy versus a patriarchy.
Right.
And we can see leaders like Mackenzie Scott and, Melinda Gates already using their finances for good and to help people. What do you see the future looking like with this type of shift in that amount of money in society?
I see the future being less competitive and that we don't have to compete against one another because I think that competitiveness is something that comes from the patriarchy, that you always have to compete. You always have to be the alpha. You always have to one-up somebody. Yeah. And we women, and I don't like to use the term masculine and feminine because I think that those terms really pigeonhole us into all of the traits that are masculine are the go-getter traits, and all the feminine traits are like the subservient traits, and I don't like to use that. But I do think that our mentality as women is more collaborative than men.
Yep.
So we will bring people up with us. We want to integrate everybody in our circle. So I think that is really going to help women succeed in the near future.
I love that. I love that. So I want to go back to your book, right? That's part of the reason you're here today.
Yeah.
And I want to give you a chance to speak about it a little bit more. I was actually talking to a friend the other day at an event, and she has a daughter who recently graduated. She's like in her late 20s. It has been so challenging for her to find opportunities and to find a job. And for that demographic, especially from the financial standpoint, right? Like they're feeling really depressed, right? That's the only way to describe it. And I guess my question for you is, in your book, right, you talk about how to have that financial empowerment. What would you say to this generation of women who did everything they were supposed to do? They did the internships, they went to school, they got the degree, but when it's their time to find that opportunity, it seems like they're falling short because, you know, the opportunities are becoming less and less for them, right? How do you bridge that, and how do you speak to that in your book?
One thing historically I think that we need to understand is that this happens to every generation. Every generation feels like they have less opportunities. Every single generation.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking to someone who I graduated from law school. I was a prosecutor and I was working as a waitress at night because I was making $30,000 a year.
Wow, you go, girl.
Right. So my generation faced the same exact thing. So I think we need to stop having a victim mentality and stop saying, oh, things are so much harder now, because every generation has said that. And pull yourself up and get a side hustle if you need to. This is just temporary.
Yeah.
Start working your butt off. In your 20s, this is when you're going to have to do work that you don't like.
Yeah.
This is where you build. This isn't the time where you're going to have your career, your dream job that's just so perfect for your mental health. That's not it. Right now is the time where you're going to grind. You're not going to like what you're doing. You're not always going to like what you're doing, but you just suck it up and do it, because sometimes you have to do what you don't want to do so that later on you can do what you do want to do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And in your book, what is your favorite chapter in your book?
Be your own prince.
Why is that?
Because I think that we have been, again, inculcated and brainwashed to believe that, that a Prince Charming is going to come and save us. Prince Charming is not coming. And if Prince Charming did come, he may not stay. So you better build the life you want for yourself. Stop waiting for someone to come rescue you. Because when you give yourself the life you want, that's the highest form of self-love.
I love that.
Because
I was going to say self-love.
It
That's
is,
where
because
you're heading with
it gives you options, it gives you power, and it gives you ultimate control over your own destiny.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand about this Prince Charming guy, I think we need to break that down. That a high-value man who is Prince Charming is not going to want a damsel in distress. He is not going to want a pet project. Okay. That's not what he's looking for. He is looking for another person who's also high value, who's healed, whole, that they can build together. The guy that wants a damsel in distress is lacking in himself and is using that to fill something in himself to make himself feel better. Look, I'm her Prince Charming. Right. And he's feeding off that. But what happens is when you get married, when you're in a relationship with that person, that insecurity manifests itself in control and possession.
Yeah. Well, that's deep. That was really deep.
Yeah.
So you're talking about I like where you're heading with this, and this brings me back to my next question, right? So as we're talking, I've been reading recently. I read a lot, as you can tell. Sorry. Is that I'm seeing that there's been a massive decline in dating app usage, right? And I believe, it became really big in like 2012, 2013 was like the big boom of like the Tinders and like OkCupid and all these other dating apps. And, I had friends that were on these apps for years, like literally years, to the point where they're like, it's the same people that I'm swiping on, right? And the challenge is that for a lot of my friends, it never worked out from the dating apps. But they're now saying that for men, they're less interested in dating apps, right? It's almost as if the idea of like you just need to be filter perfect and you might want more substance for both sides is starting to become relevant, right? It's less about like what they look like, but more like who they are. What do you feel about this shift possibly on how to meet that person if someone is looking to still have a partner in their life, right?
Yes. I'm an aberration. I met my man on a dating app in 2016. Okay. We're still together. And, it was great for me, but back then, I think it was a little different.
It was.
I think we've taken it to an extreme level on the dating apps because I was swiping not just on people that I thought was hot. I would be like, this person seems interesting. And to be honest, when I first met my man, I didn't have butterflies in my stomach. I really didn't. He knows that.
You're like, he knows what?
That. He didn't either. And I'm like, what do you mean? Do you not have eyes? But really, like, we both weren't like, but you know what he brought me? I felt a sense of peace. And that's what made me be like, you know what? This guy, and he is really, objectively, he's very handsome, very handsome. But for me, like, it wasn't just the butterflies, but it took time for us to get there. And I think the problem is that we are so in this immediate gratification circle that the second that the person isn't like super hot or we don't have that connection, then we're just done. And that's what dating apps give you is that like that immediate connection. But then when you meet in person, it's just like not there.
I'm actually very big on like energy, right? So like if we're even talking about like energy, I'm in a place where I'm just like, how do you even feel that through that app? And then maybe that sometimes is that disconnect with someone in person. But there could be someone that like you have never even met before and you're meeting them for the first time, but there's like almost this magnetism between the two of you. Like it's just so intense. And like when you feel that, it's almost like your higher self or light bulbs going off saying like, maybe I should pay this person a little bit of attention, right? But when you do that, where does the line start between following your heart and say that person that you just got magnetized to, right? And you're like, he's so fine, or we have this energy, we have this in common. Maybe he's not financially together. Where does the line come in on that, right?
Well, I think it just comes with time. If you're feeling, I have met people that I'm like, I think I'm going to marry this person. The first date, I didn't end up marrying them, but that is the energy that I felt. It's part of the process. But you can't get so excited so quickly or one way or the other. Don't get swayed one way or the other. Give the person an opportunity. Get to know them. Go out on 2 or 3 dates with them and really get to know who they are. Because if you're just going by this like magnetic attraction, you have love goggles on. You're not going to be able to see all the little things you need to see that would make you be like, whoa, just like the broke dudes I've dated. Like they were so hot, but they were broke, but I couldn't see it because I was too busy going, God, this guy's so hot.
I think my favorite thing to say to my friends sometimes, especially the ones with kids, is like, you're raising your own child. You don't need to raise another one, right? Like that, and that's what it might feel like sometimes. And what's crazy about it is that like we don't take that into account. So that's a very, very important call out. But if we're going to talk about preparation, right, and just making sure that we're as financially secure, whether we're in a relationship or not, we have to think about investments, right? And over the last couple of years, or not even the last couple of months, everyone is watching the stock market like crazy, right? What advice do you have for women who are trying to figure out ways to invest and make smart investments for themselves, and they never really even ventured in the space because investing, traditionally seemed like it was more of a man's world.
Because we've been taught to believe that we're not good with money.
Exactly.
Women are good with money. But study after study shows that women are actually better investors than men. Period. We just are. We're better investors than men. And that's the first thing that we need to understand. But we're so scared of it because men go into things without even thinking about it. They're not afraid. They're not afraid. And that's just because they've been raised that way. When a boy falls out of a tree, they're like, oh, get right back up. Keep it moving.
I say that to my son.
Right?
Shake it off.
Right. Shake it off. But when a woman or a girl does that, oh my God, are you okay? Don't go back up. So we've been taught to be risk adverse. So investing is one of the simplest things that you can do. And it is your key to your financial future and your financial freedom. And it's so easy. I'm just going to tell everybody what to do right now. Okay. You open an investment account with Schwab or Fidelity. Make sure it's a free account. They'll give it to you. Then what you want to do is you want to look and Google ETFs or index funds. These are pool of funds. Okay. They're a pool, which means that you're diversified. You don't want to buy Google. You don't want to buy Tesla. Why? Because those can go to zero at any given time. Tesla was within 30 days of going bankrupt. Okay. So those things can go to zero. You don't do that. You buy ETFs and index funds, which are diversified. And you see which ones perform the best in the last 5 years. You buy those. And what you do is you set it up to where from your checking account, money gets transferred into your investment account every single month. And every single month it's going to buy ETFs and index funds. And you set it and you forget it. You don't even look at the stock market. I honestly do not look at the stock market ever because investing is a long-term play. It takes 10 years to beat the cyclical nature of the stock market. So you got to be in it for the long run. And if you're in it for the long run, you don't need to, you're just going to let it ride until you retire.
Got it. All right, I love that. Okay, so going to your book now, is there any part of this book that you want to speak to a little bit more? I want to give you that space, that grace to talk about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the part of the book that I want to talk about is the lack of confidence that women have and how we, again, have been brainwashed and inculcated to believe that we shouldn't brag about ourselves. That if we brag, it's boastful, it's not nice. And an example that I give in the book is Billie Eilish, when she kept winning year after year after year. And every time she would get up there, she'd be like, I don't deserve this. I can't believe I won this award. God, this award should go to somebody else. And I was cringing every single time because have you ever seen a man do that? Never. You've never seen a man do that. And the reason you haven't is because it hasn't happened. Because men are taught to brag about themselves. And this ability to brag gets them noticed in the workplace.
It's currency.
Yes. And it gets them into upper level jobs. Right? So women, we don't brag. We don't brag about ourselves because studies actually show that women that brag about themselves are less liked. Okay? So we don't brag about...
They say that about attractive women too.
Right, exactly. So we don't brag about ourselves. Our body language is different than a man's body language in the workplace. Men walk around with their head up, chest out, like they own the place, like brimming with confidence. I'm like, dude, it's your first day. Calm down. Literally. But women are shrinking violets. And then because of this insecurity that we have, because of this lack of self-confidence, we don't apply for upper level positions. And that's a huge issue. Do you know about the Hewlett-Packard study?
No.
Okay, so
share that with me.
Hewlett-Packard did a study because they wanted to know why women were not applying for upper level jobs. The results came back and it showed that in order for a woman to apply for any job, she felt like she had to meet 100% of the requirements. Okay? Men, on the other hand, 60% of the requirements. That's an F. That is an F. So the man is like, I know I have a big fat F in the requirement, but I'm going to apply anyway. Who cares? Let me see what happens. And good for them. That's the way it should be. So that dude applies and gets the job versus the woman who didn't apply, who has 85% of the requirements, is calling him boss. And that's on us.
That's the norm.
And that's on us because we are not walking in with power.
So so this is great. I mean, the Soulful Circuit, right? Like we're focused on like empowerment, wellness, like getting people to live their best life and be the best version of themselves, right? And as you're talking about this, one thing that I believe it was Sia, the singer Sia, who said this, but when she was talking about confidence in spaces, she was saying mirror work, right? So she was saying that was one of her most powerful tools, like literally going in the mirror every morning and saying like, I am the best at this, or I have this, or I'm going to win this. What do you feel on like things that people can do to build that confidence on their own before they get in these spaces where they have to like speak up for themselves?
Yes, I do exactly what Sia does. Me too. Is that every single morning I tell myself that you are a badass. You're going to kill it today. You are no less than anybody else. in any situation and that you need to own your power.
Yep.
And it is work. It is so much work because, again, it's rewiring of our brains of everything that we've been taught that's so different than what reality actually is. And we have to do it every single day or you're going to forget.
Yeah.
You're going to forget.
Well, I mean, I also bring that up because I'm thinking about going back to what we were talking about with the huge like increase in divorces, right? You know, and a lot of people say women, the part of the reason women were getting married so much before is because they didn't have the rights.
We didn't have any other choice.
They didn't have any choice.
Yeah.
And now that women actually have the, rights and are able to have an income and to buy a home on their own and like open a bank account on their own, like the dynamic of that is changing. But from a divorce standpoint, there is an impact on that on women as far as confidence, right? And when you've been with that same person for, 15 or plus years or even less than that, they become part of your identity in those social circles and your professional circles. And then you're almost being born again as this new version of yourself who might have kids now, right? But you're also trying to look for a new soulmate. What is your advice to those women who are, in a place where they might be a little bit older, but that confidence is just as important. And that life decision that they made, right, to start from scratch again. A lot of them I know are starting with almost nothing, right, financially. What advice do you have for them?
It's never too late. Do not betray your soul because you are fearful of the unknown. And a lot of times we do that. We betray what we know we have to do or what we should do because we are so fearful. And we stay stuck in situations that are literally killing us.
Yeah.
Right? So stop betraying your soul.
It's true.
Take that leap. It is never too late. I started my TikTok channel at 48.
Wow.
Everybody laughed at me. Everybody. Wow. They were like, you're on TikTok? This is for 20-year-olds 20-year-olds that are dancing.
Yeah.
Right? But I have advantages at 48 that the 20-year-old doesn't have. What are those? I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at.
Yeah.
Right? The 20-year-old doesn't know that. The 20-year-old's doing something. I knew that I was good at providing information, didn't know anything about editing. So guess what? When you're older, you also have the money
to hire,
hire someone, right? I had the finances. Not only did I have the finances, but I also had the network. I know a lot more people at 48 than I did when I was 20.
That part.
So you tap into your network. So there's so many advantages to starting over in later on in life that the 20-year-old does not have.
Yeah.
And you have to tap into that and not be afraid to jump.
Yeah. I love that. So for our viewers here, right, as they start to look into your book about never dating a broke dude, they see the cover and they're just thinking like, oh, is this a woman-hating type of thing, right? And it's crazy for women, whether it's like, you're an executive in the the workspace, right? Then you have to be this certain type of tough person all the time, right? But even when you're in your moments of vulnerability, if you say something like that, then you are, sexist and anti-men or this and that. What would you say to people who try to label someone who's just saying like, I have standards, right? Like, what do you say to that?
Let them. Who cares?
Right.
I don't give a flying F what anybody thinks about me, what comes out of my mouth, or what I think.
And there's power in that.
Absolutely. You cannot care about that because people who tell you that you're being too much, you're too aggressive, you're too much of a feminist, you're too this, you're too that, they are trying to dim your light because they don't feel comfortable in your presence because they're intimidated.
Yep.
And that is the playbook to shut women up, calling us bossy, calling us bitches, calling us man haters.
Yeah.
That
over-sexualizing us as if we don't have brains.
Right, absolutely. Yep. That is the way to shut us up and keep us down.
Yeah.
And if you give in to that, if you fall for that, then it's your fault.
Yeah.
You should not be falling for that.
So, okay. So, next question for you, right? This is. I want to make sure we end it on something like very positive, right? What are you most excited about for women in the forefront who get your book, rediscover who the F they are, right? And use it as a playbook, literally, on how to like become the best financial version of themselves, right? What are you most excited? What do they have to look forward to on the other end of this?
I think women have to understand how far we have come. Okay, we have come despite what the current administration is doing and taking back a lot of our rights. We have come so far. And despite every hurdle that has come our way, despite that, we're still thriving. Women are in medical school more than men, the enrollment. The enrollment of women in law school, greater than men. Right? We are coming up. Women are becoming the majority of women earn more than their husbands.
Yes.
Right?
Saw that stat. Mm-hmm.
So we're really coming up. And that just tells you how powerful we are. That despite everything that they've thrown our way, we are still thriving and we're going to continue to thrive.
Yes.
So this isn't it. That we need to just keep moving. And one thing that I want to talk about as far as like the success for women, because I think this is a really important statistic. So, Fortune 500 companies, only 10% of Fortune 500 companies, CEOs are women. But we comprise over 50% of the population, okay? But here is the best part. When they rated CEO performance and they broke it down by gender and color, here's how it comes out. Top performing CEOs, women of color. Next, white women. Next, men of color. And lastly, white men. And what does that tell you? That tells you that we have had to exponentially outperform our male counterparts to such a degree to even get the job, that when we're in the job, it's easy. We're killing the game, right? Versus Harrison Johnson III, who got the job because of his dad. He hasn't been battle tested. He can't hang with us, right? So that is how powerful we are. That despite these obstacles, we are still becoming CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and killing the game in it. That's how amazing we are. And every single woman should know that about themselves.
I love that. Well, Pattie, thank you so much for being on the Soulful Circuit today. It was so great to have you. Again, if you can just hold up your book real quick so everyone can see it. Please get a copy, guys. Get a copy of this book. It's amazing. And I think we're all excited about the future of women going forward. So thank you, Pattie, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
It was great to have you.
This is fun.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.